Thank you guys for joining. Where are you guys joining from? Put it in the chat. He is in Idaho. Oops. Belle Marie from MECTEC College in Puerto Rico. Oh, awesome.
Oh, that's
so cool. Yeah.
Austin.
Okay. Well, looks like we have the majority of our registrants in the session, so we can go ahead and get started here. Let's see. Yep, MediaTek in Houston. Awesome. Thanks for joining, Rebecca. Great. Well, then we can go ahead and get started. It's great to see some names that I recognize and some that I didn't recognize. So if you're familiar with CourseKey or not, thank you so much for being here. And we have a pretty great presentation for you guys today. So yeah, welcome in. Thanks for spending part of your day with us. My name is Alex Weitzel. I'm the marketing manager at CourseKey, and I'm joined today by Ina Hull. She's the Chief Operating Officer at Legacy Education. Hi, Ina. Thanks for being here.
Hi there.
And the two of us are going to be going through 30 retention tips that hopefully you can take back to your school and implement right away, or start to implement to really move the needle in terms of increasing student retention. And I'm really happy again to have Ina here with us, because she is going to share her experience and her knowledge on some of these tips with us. And it's going to be very valuable to our audience. Now, before we jump in, I wanted to mention this webinar is recorded, or is being recorded. And so you'll get a recording of the webinar sent to your email, most likely tomorrow. And we're also going to send you a list of these 30 retention tips to your email, so that you don't have to go back and write down each of these tips and go through the recording. We don't want to have you do that. So you'll get that list in your email as well once this is done. All right, so we're doing 30 tips in 30 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to pass it off to Ina for the first tip.
All right, optimizing staff resources when it relates to retention. Obviously, career services is a team that I normally have worked with in the past that has successfully secured some of these students in here, as well as admissions and student services. For those of you who do not have any student services staff, I know recently this past year we did create that position within our organization and our different brands, so that student services can create activities such as open houses or student appreciation events, or to post available resources. And leveraging that type of position will also support your retention efforts. So between admissions, career services, student services, and obviously your program directors and registrars, those are the teams that you should be leveraging to keep students in class.
Wow, that was perfect timing. Awesome. On to number 2. This is actually a two-parter. This goes to number 3 as well. But number 2 is collect the dots. And really, this is a philosophy about organizing your data and organizing the inputs that you receive. We know that a lot of the vocational schools have data tied up in different systems, like your LMS, your SIS, and your CRM, of course, other systems too. And it can be hard to really gain any insights in terms of if a student is at risk or not. So really, this part of the philosophy, collect the dots, is understanding your data and organizing it in a way that will help you execute number 3, which is connecting the dots. So just gathering the information and having that available to you so that you can do the next tip.
All right, I'm going to cover connecting the dots. So once you gather that data, obviously you want to look for patterns. Some of the areas that I have looked at based on my experience, obviously, are attendance patterns, and believe it or not, delinquency rates. If you have students who have cash payment plans and they're falling behind on their cash obligations, that is a sign that a student may be at risk, or maybe there's financial struggles. So you'll want to talk with your business office and financial aid teams. You'll also want to see their patterns of attendance, even though they may be attending. What does that look like? Are they actively engaged in other activities on the campus? Are they responding to your emails and open rates on emails or open rates on text messages? If someone has gone dark, that is not a good sign. So you definitely want to do some data analysis on all those key points.
Yeah, that's great. On to number 4, looking closely at student attendance, and really that should say student attendance records. This kind of goes back to what Ina was talking about, taking a look at the student's individual record to determine if there's extra support needed. So if you know, hey, the student I see has missed three classes and they can only miss a total of 5 before they're dropped, I need to pay more attention to them, maybe reach out to them and offer some support and try to understand how we can help them stay on track and not hit those 2 extra absences. Or you can look at it in a different way in terms of trends, like Ida mentioned, where, hey, this student is traditionally really good at coming to class and has a great record. In the last 2 weeks, they've missed 2 classes. Let me see what's going on there and see if I can help them and get them back to class.
All right, acting proactively. I have to say we've been very successful in this area between our registrars, our program directors, and our directors of academics or education. And they do weekly calls, as well as we have a weekly operational calls where we cover every major unit. So in that area, we take a look, we talk about at-risk students. What does that look like? Are there grumblings coming across the way? Is there a student who may be struggling and may need to go on a leave of absence? But it's really, really critical that you do have your academics teams talking with your registrars, your program directors, and your program leads with the instructors to find out who may be at risk and what additional support services you need to provide to those students.
The timing is great every time. Okay, number 6, getting visibility into offsite programs, and that includes externships, clinicals, etc. So really, we know that it's traditionally a bit more difficult to understand what's happening at your offsite locations, and that could be because communication with the site preceptor is not as streamlined, and there are a few moving parts, and maybe even you're collecting attendance with pen and paper in those situations, and it can take sometimes weeks to get inside there. We know that the externship is usually towards the end of a student's program, and it's really problematic if they don't get those hours done in time, and they might have to start over, and that is just takes a huge hit for retention. So if you can understand what's happening off-site, either through a digital attendance collection method or some other collection method, then you have a much higher chance of helping those students.
All right, examining trends in grades and assessments. This is where it's really important that you work closely with your instructional team, watching for timeliness in returns of assessments. Are students turning them in on time, or are there patterns that the student is late with responding to their activities? Are their grades lagging? Was it a one-off that they failed a particular quiz or a subject? Or is there a pattern now where you're seeing multiple failure points? Those obviously are red flags. Now, your instructor may know that information, but if it's not being recorded in your student information systems, it's really important that you get that information in there so we can pull that data, run the trend lines, and see what patterns may be happening. If it's an entire class situation, then you may have an instructor situation. So it's really important you gather that info.
That's great. Number 8 is offering blended or hybrid learning. Now, of course, that's easier said than done right away, but this does help for at least the partner institutions that we've been working with and that we've talked with. Having blended and hybrid learning really just makes the barrier to entry for these classes a bit lower. So if you have students who, for an on-ground class, have to come to class 5 times a week, and they're not always able to do that, they might miss 1 or 2 every few weeks. If you have hybrid or blended learning where the student doesn't have to be on campus as much and can really take a bit more autonomy over their schedule and kind of put in their schoolwork and fit that into the rest of their busy schedule, then we've seen that schools have had more success with keeping students enrolled in those blended and hybrid programs.
All right, pushing out notification, events-based. So this is a great opportunity. If you're using a robust student information system like an anthology or campus view, you can set up triggers for students as they reach midpoints to the class. End of mod or end of class or end of term events are also a great way to send out notices of encouragements to students, congratulating them that they've completed and they've made it. I've also seen where we actually make during a midpoints are really important. So if someone is struggling up to that point, you want to have some type of midpoint celebration for your students to say and recognize where they're at. I have found that doing those countdowns or the days left or the number of hours left and publicizing that to our students like a Fitbit and tracking your steps with attendance works very effectively also.
I love that analogy. All right, number 10, choosing quality externship partners. Now I know you don't always have like a huge array of choices, but if you do, working with partners that, number one, are student focused and are really invested in helping the students with their skill development and that are known for good teaching, that is of course going to play a huge role in the student's experience, and maybe even form relationships with those people at the sites that make them want to come and look forward to coming to work there instead of dreading that they have to go travel and go to an offsite and get their hours done. Choosing quality partners that are really invested in the students and are hands-on with teaching them their skill development goes a long way versus places that don't give students that attention.
All right, using technology students are familiar with. I'm going to talk about social media. All right, that is we found that's been very, very successful, especially with our student services representatives, connecting with students through Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever way. If sometimes you cannot get a hold of them through text, reaching out through social media, they're very, very responsive. So sending out messages or announcements or reminders to particular cohorts of students, creating pages, working closely with your marketing and compliance teams to make sure that can happen. But you cannot fail by using social media. I think 99% of our students, some way or another, are involved with social media, and they're very, very familiar with that technology, and we should be too.
Yeah, such a good resource and tool to use. Number 12, getting insights into FDA and LDA sooner. Really, this is framed from a viewpoint of getting LDA as soon as possible versus getting it a bit later in the process. And really what that allows you to do is know exactly when a student, their last activity was, their last date of attendance was, so that you can intervene with them as soon as possible. Instead of with some traditional attendance collection methods, it can take maybe days, sometimes weeks, to get that information in and make it so that you can actually reach out to them and know that they've been at risk. We know that that delay can be really detrimental in terms of getting student back on track. So the recommendation is using a digital collection method that can actually automatically send that information to your SIS so that everyone knows where the student stands right away.
All right, more relevant outreach. This goes back to connecting those dots again. If you identify an issue, whether it may be students are struggling with retaining the information, tutorial services, making announcements, providing guest speakers to come on your site and provide services to students on how to do time management, as well as if they're struggling with a particular concept in math or a science, to have a special carve-out session, and working with students who may be struggling or have confidence issues in those particular subjects. We've also had students who are struggling with juggling family life with school life and how to do those advisement services, and bringing in successful students who've graduated and talk about that and sharing their experiences really helps.
Yep. Oh, come on. We move on to the next one. All right, well, the next one is building a digital learning community. And really that goes back to what Ina was talking about with social media and using that as a tool. We know that students spend so much time there, and giving them a way to interact with their peers or even alumni on those different platforms is another resource that's really helpful for students, especially modern students, where they can ask their peers different questions that they might not want to ask their instructors. They can get different resources about school from students who have been there already. And it also gives them a place to interact with school when they're not on campus. So having that 24/7 access to people that are in a similar situation as you is really helpful for having students persist and building those relationships. Okay, I feel like this is frozen.
That's all right. I will go to the next one, which is alerting staff daily to the most vulnerable students every day. So if you do not have a daily standard email account for that type of communication, I would encourage you to do so. We have what's called a daily update email address that we use, but we also have an at-risk email update so that we know that instructional staff, the academic teams, and others or registrars can send it to that generic email account. It then alerts an entire group of people that are affiliated or registered with that email account so that we know every day what's happening. And if there's a high alert, you could put an alert tag on it so that we can try to reach out, and all of the key players are on that email. And if they've been working with that student or they've had communications, you can quickly get that information back so that you can take an action plan on it.
That's right. All right, number 16. Oh, I think it's working now. There we go. All right, number 16 is ensuring that students are receiving the education that they were actually promised. And the way that I'm looking at this one is in a lens of instructors and how they manage the class. So we know that sometimes instructors may start class a bit late or end it a bit early. And although it's just a few minutes every class or every week, those minutes can add up to a significant amount of instruction time that, one, if they miss it, the students might feel shortchanged, that they didn't get the full academic experience that they should. And number two is it can impact the skill development as well. I mean, imagine an extra 5 hours every module for helping students gain the knowledge that they need and really develop those skills. That can be a deciding factor in their grades or even their performance offsite. So ensuring that they're getting the right amount of hours, and you can do that through another digital attendance collection method. Can also tell you, okay, this instructor is starting class on time, and I can see that they're ending it on time, so we're all good there.
All right, this is critical. Survey your students for insights of areas of improvement, whether it's a Survey Monkey or you do traditional mail through the mail. It's really, really important. I know many of you may have do this already, but we have found that we have gotten the most successful results by doing end of mod surveys, end of course surveys, midpoint surveys along the way to find out what are the things that are working well and that are not. And surprisingly, I've had the greatest success identifying just the small things like the microwave in the student rest area is not working, or there's a broken leg on a chair. You would be shocked by fixing those little things at how quickly you can improve your satisfaction rates and know that you're taking those surveys seriously and you correct it.
Yeah, I love that one. This might be my favorite one, though. Give students access to their up-to-date progress at any time. And you might be thinking, how is that possible? Well, there are either a mobile app where a student has their, in the case of Course Key, they have their grades, their attendance, their skill development. It's all up to date on their app whenever they want to access it. There's some other portals that they might be able to access with a mobile device if they want to. But giving students this access to their up-to-date progress really allows them to take accountability and ownership over their progress. And one thing we've heard from our partner institutions that I love is that students are guiding themselves through to graduation, so they can see exactly if, hey, I've missed a few attendance or missed a few classes, I need to make sure I'm there for these next ones. I have 10 more skills that I need to practice and get those in, and just really guide themselves through to graduation.
All right, give students a dedicated channel to reach instructors. We've done this a couple of ways. One, there's a student portal access. We're an anthology campus view school user, so creating that ability so when students access their instructor through that student portal, and they can directly email the instructor is critical. Our learning management system is Canvas. The students can do that the same. And you want to create an avenue for which they have privacy, because there are many times that students are not going to post a question on a public forum. So it is really, really critical that students, they want to have a safe place to ask a question that they may feel embarrassed about or really need support along the way, and granting access to the emails so those students can get to them along the way. So Google Chat is also another great way to do this, but for sure a student portal.
All right, number 20 is move off of paper worksheets for skill attainment. Now this kind of comes from the stories and the experiences we've heard from our a lot of the beauty and wellness schools that we work with, is that when they've had paper worksheets for students to track their blow dries and their shampoos and things like that, they get lost a lot, or they get damaged, and a lost sheet really sets the student back tremendously in their program, and I'm sure is just a huge morale hit to them as well. If they have to start over with all the skills that they're tracking, then it's really just, they might even question the worth of the whole thing. So we want to make sure there's no more lost sheets ever again, and really easy way to do that, well, I say easy, but the way to do that is to track it digitally and have it stored in the cloud, where if you need to, you can access it from any device and at any time, and the record is never lost.
Offer daycare. This is a great opportunity to partner if you don't have the ability to have, or you do not have a daycare center that's on site. I would strongly encourage you to take a look at creating partnerships with a daycare center that your employees and your students may be using at the same time. We have found that obviously our best resources many times are our own employees. And if you create a partnership with the facility that's nearby, that you could cycle in not only your own employees, but as well as getting your students to utilize those services, you can create that partnership and provide extended services or additional services. Many of these sites want to know that they have a continuous pattern of students or customers coming through. And so this is a great way to do that between that partnership.
Yep, great one. So number 22, closing the feedback loop sooner. Really what I'm thinking about for this one is for student assessments, exams, or even evaluations, getting the results back to them, or the feedback back to them as soon as possible. I think you mentioned trying to do it within 48 hours is really the best time, even sooner if possible. But having two things about this: getting students their results quickly really shows that they're the priority, and it puts the ball back in their court in terms of, all right, you have another resource here to really develop your skills and to hone your knowledge. And the other thing is, if you wait too long, it's really hard for a student to apply that feedback to their learning. And if it's out of sight, out of mind, they might not even think twice about it when they do get it back a few weeks later.
Transportation resources. This is probably one of the biggest areas, especially today, and many of you know this, with gas prices increasing. If students are struggling with paying for their gas, definitely consider getting passes or gas cards for your students, as well as creating opportunities to do rideshare programs. Here again, this is a great opportunity to get student services involved. Parking, especially if you're in a high cost area. I was with a school group at one point where we were in the San Francisco Bay Area, and parking was very expensive for our students to go to extern sites. We coordinated activities with Uber and did rideshare programs and coordinated them to park either at our campus, and then created a shuttle service from the campus to whatever site that they were going to, so the student didn't have to worry about the gas or the parking once arriving. So really, really good. Get creative resources here.
Yeah, I feel like that's one that you might not think about, but is really important. Okay, attendance collection methods and identifying bottlenecks and areas for improvement. I'm really relating this back to the student experience and making them feel great at school and not annoyed in any way. I'm thinking the traditional attendance methods, like verbal roll call, for example, that takes up a few minutes of the start of class every time. And over time, those minutes grow into hours. And also, if you're using like a hand scanner or any attendance method where students have to wait in line, that can be like a bit annoying to them, annoying for lack of a better term, because we know that they have busy schedules and they want to get moving. And if they have to wait in line for a few minutes before and after class, like that's not a great experience for them. So if you can change your attendance collection method, there's mobile attendance collection methods. There's other things that you can do there, but really just streamlining that process, that daily process, to make their overall experience better.
All right, getting access to good internet. So COVID really brought this to the forefront for all of us who had to move quickly to an online environment. There are many providers out there that actually provide free or reduced services for internet access to that student at home. If you haven't done that already, I would highly encourage you to work with your local and your largest internet service provider. There are grants and opportunities and lists that you can do and give those services and provide those instructions to your students. Even assist them in getting that internet set up and give them an attestation that they are a student with you. Many times, once they get verification that they are enrolled in an academic program, they can get reduced or actually free service and quality service at home.
Definitely. We have 3 minutes to go, so I'm going to go quickly through this one. Keeping alumni relations high. So really making use of your alumni and having them be a resource to currently enrolled students, whether that's to actually have them sit one-on-one with them and talk through certain situations with them as someone who's been in their shoes, or even to have them come to class for 10 minutes to talk about where they are right now and be an inspiration to the students. Either way that you use them, it's going to foster a sense of community and help some of these students build relationships that will hopefully keep them enrolled in their class and give them another person to talk to if things aren't going as expected.
All right, wraparound services. It goes without saying this is really, really important in terms of giving them additional support, whether it is providing them the ability to print their materials for the class in your lab and give them an allocation to do that. That is a big deal. Many students want to be able to print their materials and they don't necessarily have the resources at home. I would also say providing extended lab hours, tutorial hours, so that students have access to get the support that they need. And that also includes whether or not it's support services offsite, working with your local community members to talk about what they can do in terms from a housing perspective or rooming and rental room opportunities along the way. Gathering all of those and going through that list is really important to get those resources to students.
Yeah. Okay, eliminating loopholes for academic dishonesty. I think the easiest way to frame this one is with a story from one of our partner institutions. They had some loopholes in their attendance collection where students were exploiting that and getting hours without actually finishing or earning all those hours. And when they switched their attendance collection method to something more foolproof, they came back to us and said, hey, what we've noticed over time, like in the beginning, those students who were kind of cheating on their attendance, they ended up being the ones who didn't persist through to graduation. And now that we have a tighter system and we let the students know about this system, is we've seen that those students who are less likely to persist and that want to cheat on their attendance, they're getting weaned out and are replaced by students who are motivated and ready to take on the challenge and take ownership of their progress. So they've seen an overall retention boost in that regard just off of eliminating loopholes.
All right, identifying any outliers in instructor performance. This goes back to your surveys. So if you're going to collect the data, then you'll want to do something about responding if there is an instruction issue, doing classroom visit sites. And much like this is a quick 30-minute session, your academics teams should be offering subjects along the way about best teaching practices, and not just in person when they're physically in the classroom, but delivering in this new wave of technology. Things get lost along the way, and the delivery in which you carry yourself, you communicate, and get those messages across, it's important. And don't always assume that people can teach. They may be a subject matter expert, but it doesn't mean that they can actually deliver that information. So you want to coach and guide and encourage development of that.
That's a great point. The last one here is adding more opportunities for engagement in class is what I was thinking about here, is really giving students a way to stay involved in their learning and take an active role in their learning instead of a passive role. It can be something as small as a quick poll every few minutes, or even group discussions or activities, maybe even something like playing a game, but something that will take the students and have them take an active role in the lesson itself and make them really feel part of it, involved and invested, instead of just waiting for the class to be over as they're passively listening and waiting for the clock to run down so they can get out of there. Just making it more fun for them and more enjoyable for them to be included in their lesson. Okay, we made it through all 30, and I know we covered a lot of different things really quickly. So any questions that you have, I do encourage you to ask them. You can shoot any questions to me at my email down there, alex@courseview.com. But I really hope this was a valuable session for you, and you can take some of these tips and implement them back at your school to help your schools, or to help your students cross the graduation finish line on time. If you want to look at any other resources for retention or other things in regards to vocational education, we have a lot of resources on courseview.com. I encourage you to go check that out. It is a new website that I'm excited about, so I encourage you to check it out. And there you can also learn about how to get involved with CourseKey and how you can work with us. We work with 300 plus vocational institution campuses across the US. So we'd love to talk with you about how we could work with you. And again, thank you to everyone for being here. Ina, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Have a great day, you guys. Bye.
Bye.